Hello, my name's Liz Kitching. I'm a member of the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, and I'm standing in the constituency called Leeds Central.
What one policy that TUSC holds do you think most applies to those people?
To young people up to the age of 25. Well, goodness me, I should imagine it's cost of living, finding somewhere to live that's affordable and comfortable. And I should imagine it's what does their future hold? Will they get a decent job with decent pay? And will they be able to have a good standard of living?
So what are your policies regarding that?
Our policies are that we would reintroduce fair rents. We would restore housing benefit, because it's cruel to take housing benefit away from young people. Many of those young people may be single parents. Fair rents, restore housing benefit. We will campaign to remove fees and loans. We would restore maintenance grants, and we would restore free education for students.
A lot of policies that you and TUSC have can be seen as idealistic, and there's been several criticisms surrounding funding. Where exactly is the funding for all these policies coming from?
Yes, my response to that is to remember that we had a whole period, a generation from which I'm from, where all of these things were possible and the rich were still rich, but everybody had a better chance of getting on in life. I think that these days we are in a period known as neoliberalism and a policy of austerity. These things are not necessary, these are political choices, and in order to fund such things, we would tax the wealthy appropriately. We would scrap nuclear weapons and bombs and arms manufacturers, and we would, yes, it's about a fair progressive taxation system.
Well, with only 120 candidates in TUSC standing nationwide, you really have no way of gaining a majority. So how are you going to ensure that your voice is heard in Parliament?
Yes, I can quite understand that question, but you see, from where I'm coming from, it's not simply about being a career politician, it's what you do outside Parliament as well. And in that regard, I come from a movement that brought down the poll tax, and a Prime Minister, a very strong and powerful Prime Minister, Mrs Thatcher. I come from a movement that put 2 million people on the streets of London to oppose the war. I come from a movement which has stopped the fascist party, the BNP. I come from a movement which has prevented the EDL from bringing fear and horror to the streets of our communities and invading mosques and attacking Muslims. I come from a movement which actually is about what you do, not just how you vote inside the green benches.
Another thing that has been raised about your manifesto is that there is a lot of talk and no real action plan. What's your response to that?
Excuse me, I'd say it's quite the opposite. Talking is not the main thing that we're about, it's actually action that we are about. For example, young people are facing a low-wage economy, extortionate rents, and extortionate cost of living. Actually, we say that when you do leave university and get a job, join a trade union and campaign for good pay and good terms and conditions. After all, you may or may not know this. In this country and much of the Western world, we have something called the weekend. We have something called annual leave, sick leave, maternity leave, equal rights at work, and so on. Those things didn't happen accidentally from politicians in Parliament. Those things came from struggle from below, and the legislation comes after. So I don't think it's abstract.
And finally, in 30 seconds, why should people vote for you and the TUSC on May 7th?
People should vote for me because we're about action and not just words. We're not about being professional politicians, career politicians, and we're not about taking £67,000 plus expenses, plus another house, plus a subsidised bar and restaurant in Westminster. We're actually about doing something for the people in society who are oppressed and exploited by, bosses who are only about profit.